The ballroom of the Ethelred was a sea of glittering diamonds and whispered power, and Marcus Thorne was at its center, his hand possessively on the waist of his mistress. He'd told his wife Serena it was a boring work event. He had no idea she was already here, watching from the shadows. But Serena wasn't just a guest. She wasn't there to make a scene. She was there to claim her throne. Because while Marcus was busy trying to impress the city's elite, he'd forgotten to ask one crucial question: who exactly owned the most exclusive venue in the city? He was about to find out. The lie tasted like expensive champagne, and Marcus Thorne drank it down greedily. "It's just the Starlight Foundation Gala, Serena. You'd be bored to tears," he said, adjusting the silk lapels of his custom Armani tuxedo. His reflection in the floor-to-ceiling mirror of their Tribeca penthouse was, in his opinion, flawless. "It's a complete networking snooze fest. All the old money dinosaurs talking about endowments. You stay home. Order that Thai food you like. Relax." Serena Thorne sat on the edge of their king-sized bed, her hands clasped in her lap. She was wearing a simple grey cashmere lounge set, her honey blonde hair pulled back in a simple tie. To Marcus, she was a beautiful, simple, comforting accessory. Quaint. He loved her, of course, in the way a man loves a comfortable, well-worn chair. But he was a man of action, a man of ambition. He was a senior VP at Vanguard Investments, and he needed a woman who sparked. Serena just was. "If you're sure, Marcus," she said, her voice soft, "I could go. I have the black dress from the—" No, he interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. He walked over and kissed her forehead, a perfunctory, dry gesture. "Honestly, Ellie, it's better this way. I need to be on tonight. I'm trying to get a word with Arthur Vance. The man is the Ethelred. If I can get his backing, the board will have to promote me. This is my night." Serena's eyes, a shade of deep, unreadable blue, held his for a fraction of a second. "Arthur Vance. Yes, I've heard of him." "Everyone's heard of him, Ellie. He's a ghost who owns half of Manhattan. Tonight he's the guest of honor at his own gala. Now I'm late. Don't wait up." He grabbed his phone from the antique mahogany dresser. As he did, he inadvertently nudged a small velvet black box from the jeweler Graf. It was empty. Serena had seen it 2 days ago, hidden in his gym bag. Inside had been a stunning, impossibly bright diamond tennis bracelet. It was not her anniversary. It was not her birthday. And it was not on her wrist. Marcus scooped up the box, shoved it in his pocket, and didn't notice the flicker in his wife's eyes. "See you later," he called out. And then he was gone. The penthouse, usually a sanctuary of quiet luxury overlooking the Hudson River, suddenly felt like a pristine, soundproof prison. Serena walked to the window, watching the stream of yellow taxis and black cars flow far below. She had been Serena Thorne for 6 years. Before that, she was just Serena. She ran a small, quiet art restoration studio in Soho, a passion project that Marcus found adorable. He loved telling his friends that his wife dabbled in art. He had no idea that her dabbling was responsible for restoring 2 Rembrandts for the Met, and that her studio was a world-renowned multi-million-dollar business she kept intentionally small and exclusive. She had wanted this. She had wanted a man who loved her, not her name. When she met Marcus, he was a hungry, brilliant analyst with a quick smile and a seemingly genuine heart. She had intentionally presented herself as a woman of simple, comfortable means. Her father, after her mother's death, had become obsessively private, and she had inherited his desire to live without the crushing weight of a public identity. It had worked. Marcus had fallen for the quiet, intelligent art restorer. He had no idea who her father was. He had no idea of the name she had dropped. Vance. Serena picked up her own phone. She didn't look at the texts from her friends or the alerts from her studio. She scrolled to a single contact, one she hadn't called in weeks. The phone rang once. "Ellie, you're calling late." The voice was deep, warm, and radiated a power that could calm markets or start wars. Serena took a shaky breath, the first sign of emotion she'd shown all night. "Hello, Dad." "He's going, isn't he?" Arthur Vance asked. It wasn't a question. "He is," Serena whispered. "He's taking her to your gala, to your building." There was a long pause on the line. The silence wasn't empty. It was heavy like a gathering storm. And what Arthur finally said, "Do you want to do about it, Serena?" Serena looked at her reflection in the dark glass of the window. The simple woman in grey looked back, but her eyes were changing. The soft blue was hardening, cooling into something that looked like steel. "I'm done, Dad," she said, her voice suddenly clear and strong. "I'm done being quaint. I want to come home." "Good," Arthur's voice boomed, shedding its warmth for a crisp executive tone. "Harrison is downstairs. The car has been waiting for you for 6 years, Ellie. It's time to put on a real dress." She hung up. She walked into her sprawling walk-in closet, past the beige cashmere and simple silk blouses that Marcus approved of. She pushed a hidden panel behind the full-length mirror. Behind it, the closet doubled in size. Here, under professional museum-quality lighting, were the clothes she had worn before Marcus. Couture gowns from Chanel Sharp, bespoke suits from Savile Row, and a collection of jewellery that would make the Tower of London blush. And in the centre, waiting for her, was a gown of the deepest midnight blue. A custom Oscar de la Renta that shimmered like a captured galaxy. "He wants to meet Arthur Vance," Serena said to the empty room, her voice a low murmur. "I suppose I should introduce them." The Ethelred was not just a building. It was a statement. A 90-story spire of black obsidian and glass on the edge of Central Park. It was the most exclusive private club, hotel, and event space in the world. Getting in for a non-member required an invitation, a background check, and a small fortune. Marcus Thorne stepped out of his black Escalade, his hand firmly on the small of Serafina Hayes's back. Serafina was the head of acquisitions at Vanguard, a woman who dressed in sharp, angular Tom Ford suits and wore her ambition like expensive, intoxicating perfume. Tonight she was poured into a blood-red backless gown, and on her wrist, glittering with cold white fire, was the diamond tennis bracelet. "God, Marcus, this place is insane," Serafina whispered, her eyes wide as they took in the soaring marble-columned lobby. A 50-foot crystal chandelier, rumoured to be a custom baccarat piece, hung above them. "It's Arthur Vance's personal playground, baby," Marcus said, his chest puffed out. He loved the way the security guards, impeccably dressed men with Kensington Global pins on their lapels, nodded at him. "This is it. This is the big league. Tonight we're not just colleagues, Serafina. We're a power couple." "And Serena?" she asked with a slight mocking pout. "Serena is watching a streaming documentary about 16th century paint pigments, probably," Marcus scoffed. "She's happy in her little world. I'm happy in mine. Everybody wins." He presented his invitation. The attendant, a woman with a severe haircut and a polite but firm smile, scanned it. Mr. Thorne, welcome. And your guest, Miss Hayes, welcome to the Ethelred. The Starlight Gala is on the 80th floor in the Grand Olympian Ballroom. As they ascended in the private elevator, its walls lined with smoked mirrors and soft-brushed bronze, Marcus felt a thrill. This was it. The air was different up here. It smelled like money, old and new. When the doors opened, the sound of a live orchestra washed over them. The Olympian Ballroom was breathtaking. Its 40-foot-high ceiling was a fresco of Greek gods, and its western wall was a solid pane of glass, showcasing a glittering panoramic view of New York City. The city's elite were all their tech moguls, political figures, old-money matriarchs. Marcus recognized Harrison Ford in a quiet corner, and a senator he'd only ever seen on TV. "Marcus, darling," a voice cut through the din. It was Amelia Caldwell, the city's most notorious society columnist. Her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, immediately clocked Serafina. And the bracelet. "Amelia, you look stunning," Marcus said, kissing the air near her cheek. "And you look accompanied." Amelia purred, her gaze fixed on Serafina. "Where is lovely Serena tonight? I so adore her work at the studio." "Ah, she's under the weather." "A small cold," Marcus lied smoothly. "This is my colleague Serafina Hayes. She's been instrumental in our new portfolio." "I see," Amelia said, her smile not reaching her eyes. She knew exactly what she was looking at. "Well, you two enjoy the portfolio. The rumor is Mr. Vance himself is making an appearance. It's been 5 years since he's been seen in public. Quite the coup even for his own party." She drifted away, already mentally composing her column. Marcus grabbed 2 glasses of champagne from a passing tray. "See, we're already the talk of the town." Serafina smiled, but she looked nervous. "That woman looked at me like I was something she'd scrape off her shoe." "She's a gossip. Who cares? Our boss is over there. Let's go say hello." They navigated the room, Marcus feeling more powerful with every step. He saw Mr. Devereaux, the CEO of Vanguard Investments, standing with a group of stern-looking men. "Marcus, good to see you," Devereaux said, his eyes flicking to Serafina and back. "Ms. Hayes." "Sir." "A wonderful event," Marcus said. "Indeed. The Ethelred is a marvel. I'm hoping to get a moment with Vance myself. The man's investment in clean tech is visionary. Having the Starlight Foundation honor him is just a formality. His own company is funding half the night's donations." "I'm hoping to do the same, sir," Marcus said with a conspiratorial wink. "I think I have an in." Devereaux raised an eyebrow. "Oh, do you know him?" "Let's just say," Marcus said, leaning in, "that I'm very good at navigating private assets. I'm confident I'll have his ear by the end of the night." Devereaux looked unimpressed. "Don't overplay your hand, Thorne. A man like Vance doesn't suffer fools." As Devereaux turned back to his conversation, Serafina squeezed Marcus's arm. "You were amazing." Marcus grinned, feeling invincible. He looked out over the glittering crowd, the orchestra swelling. He had the job, the woman, the venue. He was on top of the world. At that precise moment, a full half hour after the gala had officially begun, a different car pulled up to the private subterranean entrance of the Ethelred. This entrance was not for guests. It was not for members. It was for one man. The black-armored Mercedes S-Class, a custom Maybach, purred to a stop. Mr. Harrison, the general manager of the Ethelred, was there himself to open the door. He didn't bow. The man he worked for hated bowing, but his posture was one of deep, profound respect. "Mr. Vance," he said. Arthur Vance stepped out. He was a man in his late 60s, with a shock of silver hair and the powerful build of a man who had not let age soften him. He was wearing a simple, exquisitely cut black tuxedo. His eyes, the same deep blue as his daughter's, scanned the private garage. "Harrison, is the ballroom secure?" Arthur asked, his voice echoing slightly. "Kensington Global has agents on every floor, sir. No press, no uninvited guests, just as you ordered." "Good." Arthur turned to the other side of the car. His personal security, a man built like a refrigerator, opened the door. Serena Vance Thorne emerged. She was unrecognizable from the woman in the grey cashmere lounge set. Her honey-blonde hair was swept up in an intricate, elegant chignon. Diamonds, real ones, a set of earrings and a necklace that made Serafina's bracelet look like a party favor, glittered at her ears and throat. Her midnight blue Oscar de la Renta gown fit her as if it were spun from starlight itself. She was in a word regal. "Welcome home, Miss Vance," Harrison said this time with a genuine warm smile. "Thank you, Harrison. It's good to be back," Serena said. Her voice was no longer soft. It was crisp, confident, and resonant. "The ballroom is at capacity. Mr. Thorne and his guest arrived 30 minutes ago. They are currently near the main bar, speaking with Mr. Devereux." "He didn't waste any time." Serena noted her face impassive. "Are you ready, Ellie?" Arthur asked, offering her his arm. Serena took a deep breath, placing her hand on her father's tuxedo jacket. "He told me I'd be bored." "Well," Arthur said, a rare, wolfish grin touching his lips. "We can't have that, can we?" They walked to the private elevator. Harrison swiped a solid black unmarked keycard. "This will take you to the private mezzanine overlooking the ballroom. You can enter via the grand staircase whenever you are ready. I will be on the podium." "Thank you, Harrison," Arthur said. The elevator doors closed. The private elevator opened not into the ballroom, but onto a dark, velvet-lined mezzanine. It was a space designed for one-purpose observation. A one-way mirror crafted to look like a series of ornate 19th-century paintings from the ballroom side formed the entire wall. From here, Serena could see everything. She scanned the room, a glittering galaxy of the powerful and the privileged, and she found him instantly. Marcus. He was laughing, his head thrown back, a glass of champagne in one hand. His other hand was resting proprietorially on Serafina Hayes's bare back. As Serena watched, he leaned in and whispered something in Serafina's ear. The woman giggled and swatted his chest. The diamond bracelet, her bracelet, the one she'd seen in the box flashing under the light of the baccarat chandelier. For a moment, the steel resolve wavered. A cold, sharp pain lanced through Serena's chest. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a humiliation. He had brought his mistress to her father's house. He was flaunting his infidelity in the one place in the world she was, or should have been, safest. "He's a fool," Arthur Vance said quietly, standing beside her. He too was watching the scene. His expression was unreadable, but his hands were clasped so tightly behind his back, his knuckles were white. "He's my fool," Serena whispered, the pain hardening back into anger. "I chose him. I built a life with him. I thought he was different. He was different when he had nothing," Arthur said, his voice a low rumble. "He was hungry, and you looked like a feast. But you only let him have the crumbs, Ellie. You never showed him the banquet. So he went looking for scraps elsewhere." Serena watched as Marcus and Serafina moved through the crowd. She saw him shake hands with Senator Brighton. She saw him try to approach Harrison Ford, only to be politely intercepted by a security guard. He was working the room, but he was a shark in a tank of whales, too small to be a threat, too aggressive to be ignored. Then she saw Amelia Caldwell, the columnist watching Marcus and Serafina from across the room. Amelia caught the eye of Mr. Devereaux, Marcus's CEO, and tilted her head ever so slightly toward the couple. Devereaux's face, already stern, tightened. He had seen it. The public display. The indiscretion. He's destroying himself. Serena observed a note of detached curiosity in her voice. He thinks this is his coronation, but he's just written his own obituary. He's a mid-level executive who brought his mistress to the Starlight Gala, Arthur said flatly. He's not just indiscreet, he's stupid. And in our world, Serena, stupid is unforgivable. Devereaux knows it. The board of Vanguard Investments has 3 members in this room tonight. They all know it. Serena's gaze drifted from Marcus to Serafina. The woman was basking in the attention, clearly believing she was the belle of the ball. She was touching Marcus's arm, laughing too loudly, her eyes scanning the room to see who was watching them. She was, Serena realized, just as blind as he was. She thinks she's won, Serena said. She's won a man who lies to his wife, Serafina, Arthur mused. A hollow prize. She has no idea what she's truly lost. Vanguard has a strict morals clause in its senior contracts. A public affair is grounds for immediate termination, especially an affair this sloppy. He's about to lose more than his job, Serena said. She turned away from the mirror. The sight of them together was sickening. I'm ready. Good. Arthur pressed a small, discreet button on the wall. Harrison will be moving to the podium. Down in the ballroom, Marcus had just cornered a tech billionaire, a young man named Julian Cole, who had recently sold his AI company. Mr. Cole, Marcus Thorne. Vanguard Investments, Marcus said, sticking his hand out. Julian Cole looked at him, then at Serafina, then back. Vanguard, right. You handle the Rivington portfolio. I do. I'm the man who... Yeah, you're the guy who shorted Tesla 6 months too early. Bold move, Cole said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. If you'll excuse me. Marcus's smile faltered. He felt a prickle of sweat on his neck. He turned to Serafina. He's just an arrogant kid. Of course, Marcus, Serafina said, but her own smile was strained. She'd seen the dismissal. It was then that the music, a soft classical piece, began to fade. A hush fell over the Olympian ballroom. The lights dimmed, and a single bright spotlight hit the grand podium at the front of the room. Mr. Harrison, the general manager, tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for the 10th annual Starlight Foundation Gala. Harrison's voice boomed rich and clear. We are so honored to have you here at the Ethelred. Tonight we have raised over $50 million for children's literacy programs across the country. A polite, powerful applause rippled through the room. Marcus clapped, puffing his chest back out. This was the main event. He whispered to Serafina, "Now's when the real speeches start. Get ready to be bored. But watch. Vance will speak. I'll make my move right after." This year is a particularly special one for us, Harrison continued, his smile genuine. For the first time in 5 years, the founder of the Starlight Foundation and the architect of this very building has decided to join us in person. He is a man who values privacy above all, but his passion for this cause has compelled him to be with us tonight. A wave of excited murmurs swept the crowd. This was it. The ghost was appearing. He is here tonight, not just as our patron, but as a father. It is my profound honor to introduce the owner of the Ethelred and the chairman of the Vance Foundation, Mr. Arthur Vance. A second spotlight hit the top of the grand staircase, a sweeping structure of marble and gold that descended from the mezzanine. The doors at the top of the stairs opened, and Arthur Vance stepped out, his silver hair shining like a beacon. The room erupted in thunderous applause. Marcus clapped enthusiastically, his eyes wide. There he is, Seraphina. That's him. He looks powerful. But the introduction. Harrison said. Seraphina began, her brow furrowed. But he is not alone. Harrison's voice cut through the applause, which immediately died down in anticipation. Please welcome his daughter, the new head of the Starlight Foundation, and our true guest of honor tonight, Ms. Serena Vance Thorne. The name hit the air like a sonic boom. Vance Thorne. Marcus froze. His glass of champagne tilted, spilling cold liquid over his hand. He didn't notice. What did he say? Seraphina's face had gone chalk white. Marcus! And then she stepped out from behind her father. Serena. She was not the woman in grey cashmere. She was a queen. The midnight blue dress, the diamonds, the regal confidence. She placed her hand on her father's arm, smiled graciously at the applauding crowd, and began to descend the staircase. Marcus Thorne's world, which had seemed so bright and limitless, shattered into a million tiny dark pieces. He was staring at his wife, his quiet, simple, quaint wife, descending the staircase of the Ethelred, on the arm of Arthur Vance. Oh my God, Marcus whispered, the blood draining from his face. Serena Vance. The applause was deafening, but for Marcus Thorne, the world had gone utterly silent. There was only a high-pitched ringing in his ears. He watched paralyzed as his wife, his Serena, glided down the marble steps. She didn't look at him. She didn't scan the crowd. Her focus was serene, fixed forward, a small, polite smile on her lips as she nodded to the luminaries applauding her. Vance. Serena Vance. Arthur Vance is her father. The equation was simple, brutal, and world-ending. Marcus! Seraphina hissed, her fingers digging into his arm like talons. Her face was a mask of panic. Marcus, that's your wife. You told me she was nobody. You told me her father was a retired teacher in Vermont. I thought he was... Marcus stammered, his mind racing, trying to recalibrate 6 years of lies. The quiet weekends in Vermont. They'd stayed in a modest farmhouse. He saw it now, a sprawling 500-acre estate. The local art she collected. All priceless originals. Her small studio. A front for a global restoration empire. It all clicked into place with the horrifying finality of a coffin lid shutting. Serena and Arthur reached the bottom of the staircase. The applause faded as they walked not to the podium, but directly into the crowd. And the crowd parted for them. Mr. Devereux, the CEO of Vanguard, stepped forward, his face lit with a broad, genuine smile. Arthur, it's been too long. James, good to see you, Arthur Vance said, shaking his hand warmly. You know my daughter Serena. Devereux bowed his head slightly to Serena. Ms. Vance Thorne, an honor. Your work at the studio is legendary. I had no idea you were the Serena Vance. You've kept your father's privacy well." "Mr. Devereux," Serena said, her voice like liquid crystal. "It's a pleasure to see you outside the office." Marcus watched as his CEO, the man he'd been desperately trying to impress, fawned over his wife. The wife he had just lied about. The wife he had cheated on. He had to move. He had to do something. "Ellie," he called out, his voice cracking. He started to push through the crowd, dragging a terrified Serafina with him. "Serena!" He burst through the circle of people surrounding them. Senator Brighton, Mr. Devereux, Amelia Caldwell, who looked like she'd just won the lottery, and Arthur Vance. And Serena. She finally turned her head and looked at him. There was no anger in her eyes, no sadness, no pain. There was nothing. It was the look a person gives a stranger who has bumped into them on the street, a look of mild, impersonal inconvenience. "Marcus," she said, her voice perfectly even. "You're making a scene." "Serena, honey, what is this?" he pleaded, his eyes darting to Arthur Vance, who was watching him with a look of cold, analytical disgust. This is your father. You own this building." "I don't," Serena said simply. "My father does. I just manage the art collection, and the charitable foundation, and the penthouse apartment you've apparently never seen." "Mr. Thorne," Arthur Vance's voice cut in, and it was not the warm voice that had greeted James Devereux. It was the voice of a man who signs checks that topple governments. "I believe you are here tonight as a guest of Vanguard Investments." Yes, sir. "Mr. Vance, I work with James." "Mr. Devereux," Marcus stammered, letting go of Serafina's arm to try and offer a handshake. Arthur Vance looked at Marcus's outstretched hand and made no move to take it. "And this woman," Arthur continued, his gaze shifting to Serafina, who looked like she was about to faint. The diamond bracelet on her wrist seemed to pulse with a guilty light. "Is she also with Vanguard Investments?" Mr. Devereux stepped forward, his face now a thundercloud. "Miss Hayes, she is a vice president in Mr. Thorne's division." "I see," Arthur said. "A colleague." His eyes flicked to the bracelet, then to Serena's face, then back to Marcus. The entire silent exchange took 3 seconds and was a complete and total execution. Everyone in the circle, the CEO, the senator, the columnist, understood exactly what was happening. Amelia Caldwell was already typing discreetly into her phone. "Marcus," Devereux said, his voice lethally low. "You told me Serena was under the weather. A cold, I believe you said." She... Marcus was drowning. "It's true, James," Serena said calmly, turning her attention to the CEO. "I was feeling rather under the weather. The atmosphere at home had become toxic. I decided I needed a change of scenery." The polite, brutal dismissal hung in the air. "And you, Ms. Hayes?" Serena said, turning her full attention to the terrified mistress. Serafina flinched. Serena looked at the bracelet. "That's a lovely piece. From the new Graph collection, isn't it? A generous gift." Serafina wordlessly began to fumble with the clasp, her hands shaking. "Oh no, please." "Keep it," Serena said, a small, cold smile playing on her lips. "Consider it a severance package. I'm sure Marcus will be liquidating his assets shortly, and you'll want a souvenir." "Serena, please," Marcus begged, finally understanding the depth of the abyss he was standing in. "Please, can we talk about this privately?" "Privately," Serena repeated, as if the word were foreign. You brought your colleague to my family's home in front of my friends and my colleagues, wearing a bracelet bought with my husband's salary, a salary, I might add, that is drawn from a company my father's foundation holds a significant stake in. She turned to Mr. Devereux. 22%, isn't it? James. Devereux paled. He hadn't known. Yes, Miss Vance. The Vance Foundation is indeed one of our most significant shareholders. I thought so, Serena said. She then looked back at Marcus. You made this public, Marcus. I'm just acknowledging your choice. Now, if you'll excuse us, my father is expected on stage. She put her hand back on Arthur's arm. Dad? Mr. Thorne, Arthur said as a final nail in the coffin. I would suggest you and Ms. Hayes enjoy the rest of your evening. Quickly. Harrison. Mr. Harrison, the manager, appeared at Marcus's elbow as if by magic. Beside him were two of the Kensington Global Security Guards. They were smiling politely. Mr. Thorne, Ms. Hayes. This way, please, Harrison said, gesturing not to the bar, but to the service exit. We have your car ready. No! Marcus yelled, his voice cracking. Serena! You can't do this! The orchestra, which had been playing softly, stopped. The entire ballroom, all 500 guests, turned to look at the commotion. They saw Marcus Thorne, his face red, his tuxedo rumpled. They saw Seraphina Hayes crying silently. They saw the two security guards, and they saw Serena Vance Thorne standing beside her billionaire father, watching him with the detached pity one might reserve for a bug. I'm not doing anything, Marcus, she said, her voice carrying in the sudden silence. You did this, all of it. You just forgot to read the guest list. She turned, and with her father walked toward the stage, leaving him to be escorted out of the building, his career, his marriage, and his life in ruins behind him. The walk from the center of the ballroom to the podium was only 50 feet, but for Serena it felt like a mile. The silence was absolute. 500 pairs of eyes followed her and her father. She could feel the weight of their stares, curiosity, pity, admiration, and from some envy. She kept her head high, her hand steady on her father's arm. She didn't look back. She wouldn't give Marcus the satisfaction. As they approached the stage, Mr. Devereux. Marcus's boss was still standing there, looking shell-shocked. The revelation that his largest, most silent shareholder was the Vance Foundation, and that one of his VPs had just publicly humiliated the founder's daughter was a corporate nightmare of epic proportions. Arthur Devereux said, his voice low and urgent. I am monumentally sorry. I had no idea. Thorne is finished. I'll have his termination on your desk by morning. Arthur Vance paused and looked at the CEO. James, what you do with your employees is your business. My foundation invested in Vanguard because of your leadership, not his. Don't let one bad apple spoil the barrel. He gave a curt nod. Now I believe I have a speech to give. This, Serena knew, was her father at his most dangerous. He hadn't demanded Marcus be fired. He had simply made it the only possible option. Arthur and Serena ascended the small steps to the stage. Harrison, ever the professional, was waiting by the microphone. Thank you, Harrison. Arthur said, his voice warm again, as if the last 5 minutes hadn't happened. He stepped up to the podium, and the ballroom lights which had come up during the commotion dimmed again, leaving him and Serena in a soft, warm spotlight. Good evening, Arthur began. His voice filled the room, a voice of effortless command. I apologize for that brief interruption. It seems we had a small disturbance in the seating arrangement. A few nervous titters ran through the crowd. Tonight, Arthur continued, we are here to celebrate the future of thousands of children who will be given the gift of literacy through the Starlight Foundation. For 10 years, this foundation has been my passion, but for much of that time, I have run it from the shadows. I am, as many of you know, a private man. He paused and his eyes scanned the audience. I was taught that wealth is a responsibility, not a privilege. That power is a tool, not a weapon. But I was also taught that the greatest legacy a man can have is not the buildings he builds or the companies he controls. It is the family he raises. He turned and smiled at Serena, taking her hand and inviting her to stand beside him at the podium. For 6 years, my daughter Serena has lived a quiet life. She chose to build her own reputation on her own terms without the weight of my name. She built one of the world's most respected art restoration firms from nothing but her own talent and her own grit. She wanted, as we all do, to be loved for who she is, not for what she has. The crowd was hanging on his every word. This was the story they had all been waiting for. In that time, Arthur said, his voice hardening almost imperceptibly, she learned a valuable, if painful, lesson. She learned that some people are not drawn to the light, they are drawn to the shine. They see a person not as a soul, but as a surface, a reflection of their own ambition. He let the words hang in the air. There was not a single person in the room who didn't know exactly who he was talking about. But that experiment is over. The Starlight Foundation needs new leadership. It needs a vision for the 21st century. It needs a leader with empathy, with intelligence, and with the strength to protect its assets from those who would exploit them. He raised Serena's hand. It is my profound honor to announce that as of tonight, I am stepping down as chairman of the Vance Foundation. The entire $10 billion endowment and all its assets, including the Ethelred, will now be under the control of its new chairwoman, my daughter, Serena Vance Thorne. The ballroom exploded. This wasn't just a succession. It was a coronation. A $10 billion transfer of power. The applause was a physical force, a tidal wave of sound. Serena stepped to the microphone, her heart hammering but her voice steady. Thank you, Dad, she said, her voice carrying a newfound strength. Thank you all. I am so honored to carry on this work. She looked out at the sea of faces, the senators, the artists, the moguls, all of them looking at her with newfound respect. My father is right, she said. I have spent the last few years in the quiet pursuit of art. But art, I've learned, is not just about restoring the past. It's about building the future. Sometimes a canvas is so damaged, so broken, that you cannot simply patch it up. You cannot paint over the cracks. Her eyes, clear and blue, seemed to pierce the very back wall of the ballroom. Sometimes, she concluded, you must strip the canvas bare. You must burn away the rot, destroy the facade, and start completely, totally, and unapologetically new. She paused, then smiled a brilliant, radiant smile that lit up her whole face. The Starlight Foundation is starting new, and so am I. Thank you. She stepped back as the orchestra swelled, and the crowd rose to their feet in a standing ovation. It was not just for the money or the power. It was for the woman. They had just witnessed a public execution and a public birth all in the span of 10 minutes. As she and her father accepted the applause, Serena felt a profound sense of calm. It was over. The old Serena was gone, escorted out the service exit with her cheating husband. The new Serena was here, and she was just getting started. While the Olympian ballroom was ringing with applause, a very different scene was unfolding in the cold concrete service bay of the Ethelred. The service elevator doors opened with a dull ding. Marcus, his face pale and slick with sweat, stumbled out. Serafina followed her hands, shaking so violently she could barely walk. The red dress now seemed garish, a desperate plea for attention. "Mr. Thorne," Harrison said, his voice devoid of all emotion, "your car is this way." "You can't do this." Marcus rounded on the manager, his voice a desperate rasp. "I'm a guest at that gala. My wife, Serena, she's my wife." Harrison stopped and looked at him. "Mr. Thorne, with all due respect, Miss Vance Thorne is your wife, and she is the one who asked you to leave. As I am the general manager of her property, I am obligated to honor her request." "Her property? Her—" Marcus was sputtering. "It's her father's. A distinction I'm sure you'll have plenty of time to ponder," Harrison said dryly. He gestured to the two Kensington Global Guards who stepped forward. They didn't touch Marcus, but their presence was an immovable wall. "The Escalade is waiting." "Marcus, do something!" Serafina suddenly shrieked, her carefully constructed composure shattering. "He's throwing us out like trash!" "You told me you were a big shot. You told me you were going to run this city." "Shut up, Serafina," Marcus snapped, rounding on her. "This is your fault if you hadn't been so greedy for that bracelet, if you hadn't pushed me to take you." "My fault," she shrieked, her voice echoing in the concrete bay. "You lied to me. You lied about everything. You told me she was a mousy nobody. You told me you were getting a divorce. You're just a pathetic mid-level fraud." "Ma'am, Mr. Thorne, please," Harrison said, his patience finally snapping. "Take your domestic dispute to the street. You are trespassing." The word trespassing hit Marcus like a physical blow. He, Marcus Thorne, who had felt like the king of the world an hour ago, was trespassing. The guards gently but irresistibly guided them out of the bay and onto the 58th Street sidewalk. The Escalade was there, but the driver, a man paid by Marcus's corporate account, was standing outside the vehicle. "Driver, open the door," Marcus barked. The driver looked at Marcus, then at Serafina, then at the two guards standing at the service bay entrance. He shook his head. "Sorry, Mr. Thorne. I just got a call from Mr. Devereux's office. Your corporate accounts have been frozen. That includes this car. I've been instructed to wait for Mr. Devereux." "Frozen? He can't do that." "He can," Serafina said, her voice now dead. She was staring at the bracelet on her wrist. "The morals clause. We're fired, Marcus. We're fired." "We're not fired until he tells me we're fired," Marcus protested, but the panic was rising in his throat. He pulled out his phone. He had to call Serena. He had to apologize. He had to fix this. He scrolled to her contact. "Ellie." He pressed call. It didn't even ring. It went straight to voicemail. "The number you have dialed is not in service." She hadn't just blocked him. She had erased him. The number he had for her simple number, had been a burner. A ghost number for her old life. He tried his office email. Access denied. His company, Slack. Access denied. In the span of 15 minutes, he had been systematically deleted from his own life. "Marcus," Serafina said, her voice trembling. "What are we going to do? My career. I'm ruined. That columnist Amelia Caldwell. She saw everything. It'll be all over page 6 by morning. Just be quiet. Let me think," Marcus hissed, pacing the sidewalk. People were walking by, staring at the man in the rumpled Armani tux and the woman in the backless red dress being stared down by security. It was then that the first guest from the gala emerged. It was the young tech billionaire Julian Cole. He was leaving early. His driver pulled up in a sleek, silent electric blue Rivian. Julian Cole paused, looked at Marcus and Serafina, and a slow, cruel smile spread across his face. "Thorn Wright," he called out. "Still navigating those private assets. How's that working out for you?" He laughed. A short, sharp bark got in his car and was gone. The humiliation was complete. It was public. Marcus looked up at the towering spire of the ethyl-red 90 stories of black glass. Up there on the 80th floor, his wife was being celebrated. She was breathing air he wasn't allowed to breathe. "A cab!" Marcus choked out, his pride shattering. We need to get a cab." Serafina looked at him. Her eyes filled with a mixture of pity and utter contempt. She ripped the diamond bracelet from her wrist, the clasp breaking, and threw it at his chest. The diamonds clattered onto the dirty New York sidewalk. "Keep your severance package," she spat. "You're going to need it more than I am." She turned and began walking barefoot down 58th Street. Her red dress a bloody slash in the dark, leaving Marcus Thorn alone on the sidewalk, a ruined man standing in the shadow of the empire he never even knew his wife commanded. The sun rose over Manhattan, but it brought no warmth to Marcus Thorn. He was in a sterile $400 a night room at the Marriott Marquis. He'd had to use his personal credit card. His corporate cards were all declined. After Serafina had left him, he'd wandered the streets for an hour, dazed before grabbing a taxi. He hadn't slept. He had just sat on the edge of the bed in his now wrinkled tuxedo, staring at the wall. At 7:00 a.m., his phone buzzed. It was an email from James Devereaux. It was one sentence. Subject termination. Mr. Thorn. Your employment with Vanguard Investments is terminated effective immediately for gross misconduct and violation of your contract's morals clause. Security is packing your office. Your personal effects will be couriered to a location of your choosing. Do not attempt to enter the building. A second email arrived 1 minute later. It was from the board of his penthouse. Mr. Thorn. We have been notified by the primary leaseholder, the Vance Heritage Trust, that your occupancy rights as a guest of Ms. Vance Thorn have been revoked. You have 24 hours to arrange for the removal of your personal property, after which it will be placed in storage. All building access has been suspended. He was fired. He was homeless. He tried to call his lawyer, but then he remembered. His lawyer was on retainer, paid for by a family and friends discount from a firm that he now realized with dawning horror was almost certainly managed by Arthur Vance's conglomerate. He was well and truly, completely and utterly alone. Meanwhile, across the park, Serena Vance Thorn was already at work. She was not in her small Soho studio. She was on the 90th floor of the Ethelred in an office that made Marcus's old VP suite look like a cubicle. The entire floor was the headquarters of the Vance Foundation. She was drinking black coffee and was dressed in a sharp navy blue pantsuit. She was on a conference call with the board members of Vanguard Investments. And so, Serena was saying, her voice crisp and authoritative, while the Vance Foundation will not be pulling its investment, we will be taking a more active role in board oversight. The recent lapse in judgment at the executive level has highlighted a significant risk in corporate culture we intend to correct. I am personally nominating 2 new members to the board's ethics committee, effective immediately. The board members, including a very humbled James Devereux, all murmured their assent. The lapse was Marcus, and the correction was a complete cleaning of the house. After the call, her father walked in holding 2 tablets. "Good morning, Chairwoman," Arthur said, a proud smile on his face. "Good morning, Dad." Serena smiled back. "It's already started," he said, handing her one of the tablets. The screen was open to page 6. The headline was explosive mid-level mistake. Vanguard VP brings Mistress to billionaire father-in-law's gala. Gets fired and evicted in the same night. Heir S eviction. The article written by Amelia Caldwell was viciously precise. It detailed Marcus's arrival with Serafina Hayes, the diamond bracelet, the public confrontation, the under-the-weather lie, and the final glorious reveal of Serena as the $10 billion heiress. It even had a blurry photo clearly taken on a phone of Marcus and Serafina being escorted out the service exit. "Amelia had a field day," Serena murmured, scrolling through the devastation. "She's already been blacklisted from every major firm in the city," Arthur said, pointing to a line about Serafina Hayes. "She'll be lucky to get a job in compliance in another state." "And Marcus? His assets are frozen pending the divorce," Arthur said. "Our lawyers filed this morning. We are citing infidelity and gross financial misconduct, as he was clearly using marital funds to finance his affair." "Marital funds?" Serena asked. "He used his own salary." Arthur smiled. "Serena, you've been paying the mortgage on the penthouse, all the utilities, the car payments, and all household expenses from your studio account for 6 years. The only thing Marcus paid for was his suits and his entertainment. His entire salary was disposable income, thanks to you. That makes his spending a misappropriation of the financial partnership. The judge will see it that way. He'll be lucky if he walks away with his watch." Serena finally leaned back. The sheer comprehensive and swift nature of the consequences was staggering. This was the world she had hidden from. A world where a single phone call could end a career, freeze assets, and erase a person from the map. It was terrifying, and she had to admit it was powerful. "He'll get nothing," Serena said. It wasn't a question. "He gets to keep the lessons he learned," Arthur said. "He gets to keep the humiliation, and he gets to start over just like he did when he first met you. But this time he has no charm left, and no one to lie to." A blinking light on Serena's new desk phone caught her eye. Her assistant, a sharp woman named Grace, patched through. "Miss Vance, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there is a Mr. Marcus Thorne in the lobby. He is causing a disturbance. He's demanding to see you." Serena and Arthur looked at each other. "He's here," Serena said, surprised at his audacity. "Kensington Global is on standby," Arthur said. "They can have him removed." Serena stood up. She looked at the page 6 article, at the view from her 90th floor window, and then at the door. "No," she said, smoothing the front of her suit. "I'll see him. Send him up, but have security wait in the hall." Arthur raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure, Ellie?" "Yes," she said. "He wants to talk. Let's talk. I have one last thing I want to say to him." Marcus Thorne stood in the center of the 90th floor office, his rumpled tuxedo a stark, pathetic contrast to the opulent modern space. The walls were glass, the art was priceless, and the view was that of a god. He looked haggard, his eyes bloodshot, his face a mask of desperation and rage. Serena sat behind a massive, sleek desk of obsidian and steel. She wasn't smiling. She simply watched him, her hands folded. "Ellie, Serena, look at this place." He started, his voice a broken whisper. "You had all this. You had all this, and you let me Why? Why did you lie to me?" Serena leaned forward. "I never lied to you, Marcus." "Not once?" "You did," he shouted. "You told me your father was a retired teacher. You told me you ran a little art studio. You pretended to be normal." "My father was a teacher before he inherited his grandfather's company," Serena said calmly. "And I do run an art studio. You're the one who called it little. You're the one who called it dabbling. You never once asked to see my books. You never once asked what I was restoring. You never cared. You just saw what you wanted to see. A simple, quiet wife who wouldn't overshadow you." "I loved you," he cried, the plea sounding hollow even to his own ears. "No, you didn't," Serena said, her voice cutting through his. "You loved that I was beautiful but not threatening. You loved that I was smart but not ambitious. You loved that I was a perfect, quiet backdrop for your grand life. The real me. This me." She gestured around the office. "This me would have terrified you. You would have been intimidated, and you would never have felt like the big, powerful man you so desperately needed to be." She stood up and walked to the window, looking down on the city below. "I gave you every chance, Marcus. I gave you 6 years of honesty and support. I built a life for you. That penthouse, the cars, the club memberships, all of it, paid for by me, by the little studio. And in return you took that money, the money I earned, and you spent it on her. You took her into my home. It was a mistake, a stupid, terrible mistake," he begged, taking a step toward her. "No," Serena said, turning to face him. "The mistake was your first lie. The mistake was thinking I was stupid. The mistake was believing you were the star when you were barely even a supporting character in your own life. So what now?" He spat, his desperation turning to venom. "You take everything, you leave me with nothing. After 6 years, I'm not leaving you with nothing." "Marcus," Serena said. She walked back to her desk and picked up a single, plain, white envelope. She slid it across the desk. "This is a check for $50,000. It's from my personal account, not the foundation, not the trust. It's not a settlement. It's a severance, as I said last night." Marcus stared at the check, his hands shaking. 50,000. It was an insult. It was less than the cost of the bracelet he'd bought Serafina. "This is a joke," he whispered. "No, it's a kindness," Serena said. "It's enough for a first and last month's rent on an apartment in a less fashionable part of the city. It's enough to buy a new suit and update your resume. It is frankly more than you left me with. You left me with lies and betrayal. I'm leaving you with a fresh start. What you do with it is no longer my concern." Marcus looked from the check to her face. He saw no pity, no lingering affection, just finality. "You'll regret this, Serena," he hissed. You'll be alone in this tower with all your money. And you'll be miserable." Serena almost smiled. "You still don't get it, do you? You were the one who was miserable. You were the one who had to lie and cheat to feel powerful. I'm just getting started." She pressed the intercom on her desk. "Grace, please send security in. Mr. Thorne is leaving." The doors to the office opened, and the same 2 Kensington Global Guards from last night entered. Marcus looked at the guards at the check and at the woman he never knew. The sheer terrifying scale of his failure crashed down on him. He had been married to a princess, and he'd thrown her away for a court jester, all because he was too arrogant to open his eyes. He snatched the check from the desk. He wouldn't make a scene. Not here. Not again. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the office, flanked by the 2 guards. Serena watched him go. She watched until the elevator doors closed, and he was gone. She stood at her window for a long time, looking down at Central Park. The city was laid out before her, a kingdom of glass and steel. Her kingdom. She took a deep breath, and for the first time in 6 years, the air felt truly, completely, and wonderfully clean. What a story of karma and consequences. Marcus Thorne thought he was playing in the big leagues, only to find out the quiet wife he'd betrayed actually owned the stadium, the team, and the entire league. He flew too close to the sun, blinded by his own arrogance, and got burned. Serena, on the other hand, showed us that true power isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's about being the person who owns the room and having the strength to stay silent until the perfect moment to speak. She didn't just get revenge. She reclaimed her life, her power, and her name, proving that the best comeback is a complete and total upgrade. What did you think of Marcus's downfall? Was it justified, or was Serena's secret-keeping part of the problem? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. Thank you for watching. If you loved this story, please hit that like button. Share it with a friend who loves a good drama, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. We have new stories of karma, revenge, and incredible plot twists coming out every single week, and you don't want to miss a single one.